The new Pearl Jam album, Dark Matter, is punchy, it's energetic, and it might be Pearl Jam's best album since Yield. We're going to break it all down track by track on this edition of Rock Album Review. Hey everybody, it's Nick here with you. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to our rock album review for the 12th studio album from Pearl Jam. It's called Dark Matter. The album just dropped. It's one of the most anticipated rock albums of the year. It's the follow-up to 2020's Gigaton, and we're here to do a track-by-track review of the new album from Pearl Jam. And I have a very special guest on the channel with me today. Here for the review, I have Hector from the Chill Dude on a Couch Reviews. How are you, Hector?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on the channel. We had a chance to, we've been following each other's channels for a little while. And last week, I was a guest on your channel for our Is It Bad review of the Stone Temple Pilots self-titled album from 2018. So that was a lot of fun. And I thought it'd be fun to have you here on the channel to do this Pearl Jam review.
Yeah, I thought so too, man.
So before we get to the review, we're going to do some general thoughts. We're going to do a track by track rundown of the record. We're going to do some final thoughts and then give the album a final score out of 5. But before we get to the review of the new Pearl Jam record, Dark Matter, do you want to just give us a little bit of your listening history with Pearl Jam? Like, have you been a fan of the band for a long time? What's your relationship with Pearl Jam like?
Yeah, well, I've been listening to Pearl Jam since 10. So yeah, in the 90s, I remember when I first got into like rock music. The first like 4 albums that I bought was Metallica, the Black Album, Nirvana, Nevermind, Psycho Wizard, and Pearl Jam 10. So those were my first like 4 CDs that I bought. So yeah, no, Pearl Jam. I just remember watching them on MTV when I think I first heard like Alive or Even Flow and then Jeremy. And I really loved them back then. And then I became a fan. I started, kept listening to them. I listened to Versus, Vitology. Then I remember No Code, I think was the first album that I was kind of like, hit and miss. But now I think it's a great album. But back then, I think it was like way too different for me at the time. And then at that, after No Code, I was getting more metal and like harder stuff. So there was a point like with Binaural that I kind of like lost touch with Pearl Jam. I really love Yield, even though I've told this story countless times on my channel that Yield was given to me as a present on a February 14th by an ex-girlfriend, and then she dumped me after that. So after the album was ruined for a little bit, but after, I still love it. And I really got back in 2006 with the Avocado album.
Yes, the self-titled record. Yep.
Yeah, the self-titled. Yeah, I call it the Avocado album.
The Avocado album. Yeah, I'm from the cover. Yep.
They have the avocado on there. I have that one on vinyl. And then after that, they didn't release anything, I think, until no, Backspacer. I almost forgot Backspacer. That I remember that was the last album from Pearl Jam that I bought physically. Backspacer, because I remember that one came out as an exclusive at Target. So at that time in Puerto Rico, Target. So I was I'm like, I have to go to outside. I had to go to Orlando. I was in Orlando when I bought that album. And I even bought a few copies for my friends because there was no Target in Puerto Rico. So I'm like, they're not going to bring the album to Puerto Rico. And I really love Backspacer.
Great record. Yep.
And then when they released Sirens to me was like, like I kind of like was so. And them like took a long time in releasing albums. There was a time that they were more consistent, but you could tell that they took a long time. And then in 2020, they released Gigaton, which was a mixed bag for me because like the beginning I enjoyed, but then the second part was a snooze fest of epic proportions. So but I got excited when I listened. First I read that they were like, this is more of a rocking album, but sometimes when bands say that, I'm like, is it true? Because like, for example, Billy from Smashing Pumpkins said that the last album was like a return to like a follow-up to Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and I was sorely let down. Uh,
Yeah, same.
so I was like skeptical. Like sometimes when these old bands, sometimes I think like, please don't promise this. Just release the album. But when I listened to the single Dark Matter, I was like, I enjoy this. It sounds promising. So yeah, but yeah, I've been a fan even in the highs and the lows all these years.
Yeah, I would say I'm the same. And going back to 10, I did a recent like a rock albums ranked for Pearl Jam here on the channel. I was talking about getting into 10. My older sister had all of Pearl Jam CDs in her room, and so I would go and listen to her Pearl Jam CDs, and like you're saying, following them through the highs and lows throughout the years, because there are a lot of highs and lows with Pearl Jam. I enjoy a lot of their 90s stuff, and then after that, like you're saying, they kind of, it's up and down throughout the years. I like the Avocado album too. That's one of my favorites. And then a little bit up and down throughout the 2010s, and they didn't really do all that much between Lightning Bolt and then Gigaton. And then Gigaton for me was also a huge disappointment. So that wasn't an album that I was into at all. And like you're saying, they've been promising that this new album, Dark Matter, would be a return to more of that rock kind of feel. And it does feel like the first single, like the self-titled song, the Dark Matter song itself, was a pretty rockin' track. But yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking going into listening to this record. So let's get to our kind of our general thoughts for Dark Matter. And for me, like I did like the early singles from this record. I enjoyed Dark Matter, the single. I enjoyed Running. I thought that was a cool song. And then Wreckage, which we heard just a couple of days ago, I thought that was a really strong track as well. But like we were saying, with Gigaton, they lost their songwriting edge, and so I think they had to kind of recover that a little bit on this new album. And so they brought in Andrew Watt, who's a huge producer in the rock world right now, and just the music world in general. He produced the new Rolling Stones album. He produced a lot of Liam Gallagher's stuff, which I'm a huge fan of his. So Andrew Watt's been all over his stuff. And then I think he brought a new energy to the band on this record. I think they needed to work with a new producer. They worked with Brendan O'Brien a lot in the past. They worked with a bunch of different people in the past, but they changed things up with this record. And I think for the most part, this is their strongest album, maybe since Yield. That might be a big thing to say, but I think it's their best album in terms of the songwriting and the melodies. I actually came away listening to this record and came away singing some of the songs and remembering the songs, which is something I can't say for the last couple of records. And I think that it sounds really, really good, and I'm really, really into it. So what are your kind of general thoughts on this new album, Dark Matter, Hector?
So I did also enjoy the singles. The only thing is that sometimes the quality, my only, I was like hesitant because I think the sound quality, what if the streaming, where it first came out, not what I listened to today, but I think like the sound, the mixing wasn't that great. I don't know if they did that on purpose. So I was like, I hope it sounds better. But when I was listening, I listened today with headphones. I listened to the album today a lot.
Repeat.
Yeah, on repeat. And it's like a 48-minute record, so it flows by fairly quickly. So after my first run through the whole album, I was like, to me, this was a mix of Yield meets Backspacer meets the Avocado album, and a little bit of Lightning Bolt thrown into mix, like that type of sounds. I'm not say, yeah, this sounds like the first two albums, because that would be a lie. It sounds more, it's more modern in, obviously the production. And I don't expect them to sound like Tenor Versus, because they're not in their 20s anymore.
Right.
So I think it would be unrealistic to think that they're gonna have like that same energy when they're like a different band. But this is a more something that I like about this album is I like the flow of the album. The last Pearl Jam album, especially Gigaton, had a terrible flow to it. Like they put like some good tracks at the beginning, and then it was all like boring, boring, boring. So I think like what they did here with the flow of the album works better for me. And I don't think there's slower tracks here, but I think every track here, even though it's slower, there's rocking parts in it. and I enjoyed that because I can Pearl Jam always had some softer side. Black in
Right.
10 is a ballad. You had Oceans. Uh, then and also on the when you had verses where they close with "Release Me," no, that's on 10. But they had that epic like ballad that closed, but it was like a rocking ballad.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think the flow of the album, I enjoyed it. I like the guitar solos on this record. There's some good guitar solos on it, and I think they sound like re-energized as a band. They were like I think the last albums they were like in a comfort zone, so to speak. In this one because they do experiment a little bit. So yeah, my first run through, I really enjoyed it, and I felt that like it had a like I went away like humming some songs that I just heard. Like I'm like that's a good thing when you remember them. So yeah, that's my initial thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing about this album is that the songs are memorable, the melodies are memorable. You're right about the guitar solos. Mike McCready sounds really good on this album. And the Pearl Jam's always been a guitar band, but some of their albums they don't really do all that much with the guitars in terms of having big riffs. It's been a long time since I feel like they had big riffs like those first two albums are on Yield. So this is the first time in quite a while that I feel like they've had a little bit more punchiness in the production of the band, and in general, I think they sound really good. So let's get into our track by track review of Dark Matter. This is a pretty long record, like you're saying, 48 minutes long. So it does get pretty long in the tooth, at least for me for a little bit. But I think for most of it, I felt like the tracks were really strong. So the album kicks off with a song called "Scared of Fear," and I thought this was a great opener for the record because you definitely need to set the stage when you have this opening track on these albums. You need to set the stage and grab the listener with your opening track, and this one definitely grabbed my attention right from the get-go. It has a really punchy riff in the beginning of it. I thought this was a great opener, and like we are saying, actually had a really catchy chorus and something that we could sing along to. I felt like with Gigaton there wasn't really any songs on that record that I could sing along to, so right from the get-go on "Scared of Fear" we had something that was a little bit catchier, a little bit more in your face. And then we were saying the band sounds really great as well. They sound like they're energized. And I think that has to do with having a producer like Andrew Watt. I think sometimes, depending on the record, they can sound a little bit tired. And on Gigaton, they definitely sounded really tired. But I thought this opening track, "Scared of Fear," had a lot of energy to it, was a great way to kick off the album. What did you think of this track?
The intro because the first 20 seconds there's like an ambient sound, and then you get that great guitar lick like at the 22 seconds, and I'm like yeah, and it picks up the pace, and it's like a very fast song, it reminded me of like Yield, a little bit of Versus, that they had those like faster songs that are shorter, so I really liked it. I thought great on it, and also you could understand him. Uh,
Yeah.
and I think it's a great album opener, and it doesn't overstay its welcome because the first, it's even though it's 4 minutes and 24 seconds, it didn't feel that long to me. Uh, but yeah, it's got a great chorus, memorable guitars, and I think it was a great way to start the album, in my opinion.
Right on. So let's get to the next track called "React Respond." And this song was really cool. Really cool track. This one had some really awesome bass and drums on it. Very explosive and very propulsive. And I said my rock albums ranked with Jeff Ament as a bass player for Pearl Jam. I always knew he was a great bass player, but I can't always hear his bass in the mix. And I think with this record, you can hear him really well in the mix. And then him playing with Matt Cameron, who I think is one of the best drummers of all time, and he's a great drummer for Pearl Jam. I think they really sound great on this record, provided like kind of the backbone of all these different tracks. And I don't think that Pearl Jam has really rocked this hard in a very long time. They've always kind of gone between having heavier tracks and softer tracks, and they do both on this record. And I think the rock tracks rock a little bit harder on this record They're a little bit more in your face. And this song actually reminded me of the track Super Blood Wolf Moon from Gigaton, but a better version of that, because it had a way better melody, and it actually had some really cool harmonies in there as well. It's hard to describe, but I guess there's these oohs that are leading into the pre-chorus of the song, and I thought those were really catchy, very very indie rock, and very cool. And then the chorus itself was maybe a little bit cheesy. It was a little bit borderline, a little bit corny. Eddie Vedder can he can walk that line sometimes, but overall, I felt the overall vibe and rock vibe of the song made up for it. So, what did you think of this track, React and Respond?
So musically, I think it's very fun and it's very energetic, like indie rock garage type of sound. But I did find when he was singing the chorus, like he's like react,
Yeah,
respond.
exactly. Yeah.
It did sound that I'm like, yeah, those are the best vocals on the record. But I'll give it to him. I like the song, even though if there's like some parts in the vocals that I thought that he sounded kind of corny.
Mhm.
But I enjoy the song, even with the react, respond. But I like it. I like the drumming. Yeah, you mentioned the drumming for Matt Cameron. You know, it's great drumming. And yeah, I think Jeff Ament as a bass player doesn't get mentioned enough. When you think of Pearl Jam, people always mention Stone Gossard and Mike McGready as great guitar players, and that's that Pearl Jam sound, and obviously Eddie Vedder's voice. But they forget about Jeff a little bit. And I know I think he writes some songs too.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like the energy in this song. Yeah, some parts in the chorus, like the way he says react, respond, could be a little corny, but I still love the song,
Yeah,
even
exactly.
with that.
Yeah, a little bit corny, but otherwise still a
Yeah.
really, really cool track. So the album so far, two tracks in, I think we're two for two in terms of strong tracks on Dark Matter. But then we get to the third track, which is Wreckage, and the band released that just a couple of days ago before the release of the full record. And this one, it took me a couple of listens to really get into it, but by the third or fourth listen, I was really, really into the song. I felt it had a really nice feel to it, some really nice pick guitar in there, some really nice piano, some really nice sonic textures going on, and then Eddie Vedder's voice on here. His voice and his melody on here are really great. You were saying like it's kind of maybe a little bit easier to understand what he's saying because he's not mumbling as much on this record. So that was really cool. And this song actually reminded me a lot of Tom Petty, of all people. Is like a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of song, and I can see that Pearl Jam would take that kind of influence from Tom Petty, because I think they were friends with Tom Petty was still alive, but definitely reminded me of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And this was one of those songs that, along with their classics, that I could see people holding up their lighters, or I guess their phones, at concerts, holding them up in the air when Pearl Jam plays the songs at their shows. So I think this could be a really great ballad for them. I think this is one of their best ballads in a long time. They've always gone between being a great rock band and having a lot of great ballads. And this one could definitely be up there. I thought there was a really nice solo from Mike McCready. And like I said, it was one of those songs that grew on me. And by the third or fourth listen, I was thinking this is one of the best songs that Pearl Jam have written in a long time. So Hector, what did you think of the song Wreckage?
Well, actually, this is one of my favorite songs on the record. It has a little bit of a country feel to it as well. When I was listening, and I love Eddie's like "Born into the Wreckage." So now that you mentioned Tom Petty, I can't unhear it.
Yeah.
I can, yeah, it does sound like it would be influenced for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I love the melodies, and I think the lyrics for this track are really good. It's a very emotional song, and I think with Pearl Jam ballads, I remember Sirens was good, but didn't do it for me with that. But this
Mhm.
one, I think it has all the elements. I like the guitar on it. I like the pacing of the song because more ballad, but it's not like super ballad slow. Because a problem that I had with Gigaton is that a lot of the songs sounded more like an Eddie Vedder solo project than Pearl Jam. And on this one,
Right.
they sound like a band. And I think Wreckage, I think this song is going to be a staple live. I think this is going to be one of those tracks that they're going to have to play because he's got that. that great appeal. I thought of like a song like when they released that Last Kiss single or something like that, like that
Yeah,
type of feeling to that
the
track.
classic 50s ballad. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really good track, and Eddie sounds great in it, and I think it's got a very memorable and catchy chorus that you can. It's like the type of song that you want to sing while you're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It's a
yeah,
definitely feel
those are
good
my
track.
thoughts on that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
a
Wreckage
sing
is a really
along
strong
track
track.
for driving,
Yeah, totally.
but do not wreck your
Hopefully,
car.
yeah, exactly. You don't want your car to be Wreckage, right? So there you go. Right
Yeah,
on. So let's get to
you
the
do
next
not
track, which
want
is
that. No.
yeah. Let's get to the title track on here, which is called Dark Matter. And I think this is one of my favorite tracks on the record as well. It was the first single that we heard a few months ago from this record. And I love the punchy drum intro from Matt Cameron on here. They make really great use of him on this record in general. And he's been in the band for a long time, but I've just never really felt like Pearl Jam made the most of Matt Cameron's drumming ability like they did with him when he was in Soundgarden. When Soundgarden, he really always
Oh
shined
yeah.
on the drums. And then with Pearl Jam, he kind of had to, I think, tone things down a little bit. He can't be as crazy as he was in Soundgarden. So I love that they really made him a centerpiece of the band on this record. I love this title track. I think it's one of the best Pearl Jam singles in a really long time, because they've had great singles, but maybe on the last couple of records there wasn't really anything to kind of to write home about. But this song in particular, I thought was a great single, and it gave us, when it came out a few months ago, it gave us a nice taster for the rest of the record. So I really enjoyed this track. What do you think of the title track, Dark Matter?
I also love the intro, the drumming intro, and I like the guitars on this one. And they on this track they use like electronics, a little bit like electronic stuff, but on a better way. And in Gigaton, when they did Dance of the Clairvoyants, they tried to do something like that, but it was like too dancey. On this track, it's more punchy, it's more rock, and it's got a great solo on it as well.
Yeah.
Like a fast solo on the track, and I've been listening to this track. When did they drop this? Like a few months ago, right?
Yeah, it's been at least 2 months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been listening to this track a lot, like for 2 months now, and it still sounds good. So I haven't had like a burnout of that track. And yeah, I think it was the perfect single to release, because it's got that single quality for the track. Sometimes I can't understand what Eddie's singing on this one. You get the mumbling, like it's got like, "Oh, I got like marbles
Yeah.
in my mouth" or something like that.
Yeah.
But you know what? He's the king of the Jarl, and
Yeah. The
and yeah,
Jarl.
it's a
Yeah.
great track. It's energetic, it's punchy, and I think after Wreckage, you need that, because Wreckage, you need like a burst of energy, and that's what Dark Matter does. So yeah,
Yeah.
great track.
Yeah, for sure. It's a great track. And that's followed up by Won't Tell, which was, I think, maybe my favorite track on the entire record. I really like this song. It kicked off with a really cool guitar riff, had a really great vocal and a melody from Eddie Vedder on here. And I think this, in general, this album has some of the best tracks that the band has done in a long time. And this one is really great. I love the chorus on this track. Again, kind of a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of feel. Specifically for me, it reminded me of the song Mary Jane's Last Dance, which is a classic thing, but just kind of that dun, 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 kind of guitar riff, which was really cool. And then I can see this actually being maybe the next single that the band releases from the record. If they continue to put out singles from this new album, I think this could definitely be one of those singles. I think this could be a big song that they play at their live shows. And I think this could actually be a really big song for them. I think it has a lot of single potential. And I think this was one of the best songs on the record. What did you think of Won't Tell?
So I like that one because it's kind of like a ballad, but it has some punchiness to it. The bass on that one, I think, shined too. There
Mm-hmm.
was like I could hear Jeff Hammond. There was like part with the bass, and I think lyrically it's also very strong. Eddie sounds great in it, and it's also a very like emotional, beautiful track. So I enjoyed it as well, and I think yeah, it has. I think it could be a single as well. It has that. It has like that quality that would make it a single. So it's almost halftime in the record, like in the half point. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good track, and it's like a 3 minute and 28 second song, so it's not that long of a track. But yeah, I also enjoyed it.
Yeah, Won't Tell, I think, is definitely, like you're saying, one of the stronger songs on the record. And yeah, it's the midpoint of the record, so it's gotta keep our interest. But unfortunately for me, they did lose me a little bit on the next track, which was called Upper Hand. And I really like this. I like the intro of this song. It reminded me of Pink Floyd because it started with some really cool organs, some synth sounds on there, which was cool. A little bit of a longer intro for Pearl Jam. But then once the song actually kicked in, I can say that the melody didn't really grab me as much as it did on the other tracks. So this was the first song on the record where it didn't really, I didn't come out of it kind of wowed. I think I was really wowed by everything leading up to this one. It had a nice feel to it. Mike McCready did a great solo on this track as well. But overall, for me, I didn't feel like this was one of the stronger tracks on the record and was the first track to kind of lose my interest a little bit. So, Hector, what did you think of this song, Upper Hand?
So it was the lower hand for you.
Yes, it was definitely the lower hand, 100%.
Yeah. So that track, uh, I don't hate it, but it reminded me a little bit of like binaural, and binaural for me was an album that had sometimes like this song could have like benefited for being a little bit shorter. But I will say, yeah, it sounded like very psychedelic at the beginning, so I like that experimentation. But it's almost a 6 minute track.
Mhm.
I did like the two solos on it. I thought they were good solos, but yeah, the to me it sounded like a weaker version of like a Wreckage
Mhm.
with some other experimentation. So yeah, it didn't lose me, but I thought that out of all the songs, this was like the weakest. Not a bad song because again, two great solos on that track, but I think a little bit of trimming on that, like instead of like a 4 minute track, like you could lose a minute from this and it would have made the flow of the song better for me, in my opinion. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, I guess we couldn't. It was too much to ask for them to keep it going as strong as it was going there for the first half of the record. So a little bit of a letdown on Upper Hand. And then we get into a song called Waiting for Stevie. I was wondering who Stevie is. That was kind of my thing. I'm like, is it Stevie
I
Nicks
thought
of
it was Stevie
Fleetwood Mac?
Nicks.
Yeah, that was kind of my thing too. I'm like, is this Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac? But this one was okay. Again, it lost my interest a little bit, like Upper Hand. I like the lyric in there. It was like, you can be loved by everyone, but still not feel love. That was kind of a deep lyric from Eddie Vedder on there. It was a decent song, but it wasn't one of my favorites. I thought Eddie Vedder did a really good vocal on it, but it just wasn't one of the songs that grabbed me. Even though I think it's again an example of the band sounding really great and really tight. It actually ended with a really cool outro on there. After the song ended, it kind of picks up a little bit there for like a split second, maybe like 30 seconds, where they do this really cool, dreamy, kind of chill outro to the song. But otherwise, for me, Waiting for Stevie wasn't really one of my favorites on the record. What did you think of this track?
I actually enjoyed that track. I thought it
Yeah.
was more experimentation, and I was wondering who Stevie is, and it's got some great solos on it too. Uh, it's long. It's a longer track too, and I thought it ended, and then they had that 30 second, which I thought at the beginning. I'm like, well, I wonder why they did this, but I think it makes sense coming the next song that comes. So
Mhm.
I enjoyed it. I think it's a decent track. I think it's better than the one before it, but maybe the placing. They could have like maybe placed it differently because they placed these two longer songs back to back, and maybe it was a little bit of a like a dip. Uh,
Yeah.
but I thought it was an interesting track, so I enjoyed that one.
Let's get to the next track called Running, which was one of the punkier songs on the album. I thought this has, again, a great bass line from Jeff Ament. He gets some real moments to shine on here, which I thought was really enjoyable. And like I was saying kind of earlier on in the reviews, I just the feeling that this rocks a little bit harder than some of the other Pearl Jam stuff that we've gotten in the last little while. And maybe like you're saying, maybe this would have worked between the other two tracks, between Upper Hand and Waiting for Stevie, because this is one of the shorter tracks on the record. What did you think of the song Running?
So running, I like it because it's a 2 minutes and 19 seconds, and it's really energetic. And I like the we're running. You know, it's cool, and he swears on it. So I thought it had a great punk rock energy. So I did enjoy it, and I think it wakes you up a little bit. It gets you pumped.
Yeah, it definitely pick things up a little bit. That's what you need towards the end of a record when this album's like 50 minutes long. You need something that's gonna pick things up a little bit. And I felt like Running was definitely a song that did that. And then things took a little bit of a dip for me again after this track with a song called Something Special, which was co-written by Josh Klinghoffer, formerly of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, who's been playing with Pearl Jam live for a while now. And this one was kind of like a little bit more like a country song for me. I don't know what you thought of this one, Hector, but Something Special, it was kind of different for the band, but it wasn't really something that I loved, especially on this record.
Yeah, it's like a country song. I did enjoy, so there's like like the lyrics to it. I thought it was okay. It's not a bad track. I'm not a huge country fan, but I thought it was an okay track, and it has some cool like guitar stuff on it.
Yeah, it was a little bit different for them, but like, yeah, it was not really one of my favorite tracks on the album, and yeah, it was a little bit more country, which was different for them, but maybe not the best style for Pearl Jam to do. I don't know. We've never really heard them do country in the past. I don't think.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Then we get to a last couple tracks on the record. One track is called Got to Give. This one actually kind of fakes you out at the beginning because it has a little bit of like an acoustic intro, and then it kind of kicks into some really punchy drums. And I thought this was a strong track for late in the album. We're saying the last couple of tracks we didn't really dig as much. This one actually had a really nice melody on it, a really nice vocal from Eddie. Drags on a little bit, but otherwise it was okay. What did you think of this track, Got to Give?
So got to give, I think it's more. It started with acoustic guitars, but I like it that then they turn up the amps up, and it's rocking. So I thought it's a decent track, and I think it picks up the pace at the end of the record, which is something good to have at the end of the record, to pick up the pace, which is something that Gigaton didn't do. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoy it was an okay track. I feel like maybe they could have cut out a couple of the tracks, maybe kept running, but maybe these last couple of tracks they could have taken out maybe one or two, and that would have made the track list a little bit stronger. Let's get to this last track, which was called "Setting Sun." I This was different for the band. The beat on this track was almost kind of like tribal. It was different for the band. It was like a different kind of beat. It sounded like a little bit like a campfire sing along kind of song. I could see the band sitting around a campfire with their acoustic guitars and playing this track. And I thought it was a pleasant closer to the album. I don't think it was really the best track on the album. It wasn't the worst track on the album, but I felt like it finished things off on an interesting note. We got a lot of different styles from Pearl Jam on this record, and they kind of ended things on more of a downbeat note than something more upbeat. But what did you think of the song called Setting Sun?
So I liked it because it starts like a campfire type of song, but then they have some great guitars, and it sounded like it's a good album closer. I like Pearl Jam album closers in the first album, and I thought the last couple of albums they were closing with a whimper. So I'm glad that this wasn't a whimper. It's
Yeah.
a longer track, but I think it's very epic in nature, and the solos at the end really are good. So I really enjoy. I thought it was a good album closer, uh, and made sense to close with that track in particular.
Yeah. So do you think like they should have cut a couple songs, or do you think the overall that they had the right amount of music on this record?
I think the length of 48 minutes was okay. Maybe you like if they could have trimmed a little bit of fat off some the longer songs, it would have been even 45 minutes.
Mhm.
but it's not. I don't. It didn't drag on for me. I wasn't bored with the album like I was with Gigaton, and yeah, it had good replay value.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the test that I always do when I'm listening to albums, and it's really by any band, is I do the Spotify test. I'm listening to it on Spotify, and then any songs that I like, I'll drag over into a playlist for me to listen to again. And I think there's about 5 or 6 tracks from here that I put into that playlist. So I think that's a pretty good average overall to, for an album to have that many tracks to take away.
Yeah. So yeah, my overall thoughts at the end, like a ranking. I think this is their best album since the Avocado album, and
Yeah.
I think the more I listen to it, the more I appreciate it. So for now, I would say it's a 4 out of 5 for me.
Giving it a 4 out of 5. I would have to agree. I think this is their best album in a really long time. Getting Andrew Watt to come in and help produce it was a really good idea because I think that he helped them and increase the quality of the songwriting. The quality of the production is there, so that really was really cool. And it, like you're saying, it reminded you of the Avocado album. It reminded me of Yield, so I think it reminded us of a little bit of Pearl Jam's better albums. So that's definitely a good thing. It has some more mainstream radio friendly songs on it, which I think is definitely a good thing because I think that's something that Pearl Jam has really lacked over the last little while is these songs that you can remember and that you're ready to sing along to at their concerts or in your car, as Hector is going to be doing with a lot of these songs, singing along in the car. So I think the second half of the record maybe not as strong as the first half, but I do think that this is their best album in a long time. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Hector, what would you say are your most favorite songs on the record?
I would say Wreckage, Dark Matter, and the Fear one, the first one. I think
Yeah, yeah.
is a great
Scared of Fear, I think it's called. Yeah,
Scared of
Scared of
Fear.
Fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's definitely up there for me. Yeah, Dark Matter is definitely my favorite. React Respond I thought was really cool, despite the cheesy singing in the chorus. And then Wreckage and Won't Tell would definitely be my favorites on this record. So that's what we're both giving it a 4 out of 5. We think the new album from Pearl Jam, Dark Matter, is a really strong effort, and it's good. We made it out of the listening experience. It's just a relief now. We know that Pearl Jam made another great record, and we can just keep listening to it and enjoying it. So yeah, we're both giving it a 4 out of 5. So I think it's a pretty solid record overall.
Yeah, indeed, man.
Right on. So Hector, thank you for coming on the channel here. Let's tell everybody about your YouTube channel, The Chill Dude on the Couch Reviews. Where can people follow you and find you on YouTube?
So they can follow me on the Shield Dude on a Couch Reviews. I'm also on Instagram as the Shield Dude on a Couch. I have a series called Is It That Bad? I do album reviews and I interview a lot of bands. So you can follow me on the socials and subscribe if you like what I do.
Perfect. Hector, thank you very much for coming on the channel. We should do this again.
Yeah, we should.
Right. I mean, now I'm getting ready to come on your channel again because we're doing an Is It Bad tonight as well. So everybody go
We're
over to Hector's
going to do
channel.
an Is It That Bad
Yeah.
for this Sunday.
Yes, exactly. You have to
And
go over
we're
to
going to
Hector's
talk
channel.
about, yeah, we're going to talk about No Doubt, Rocksteady from 2001. And we'll ask the question because, so is and this is what you should say, ask, is it that good? So we'll ask that. So we'll see you all.
Right on. Thanks, Hector. Take care.
Okay, bye.